I have been wanting and greatly been desiring to get back to my videos about understanding ideology and why Americans are thinking the way they are. Um, but unfortunately, which are really research based. But unfortunately, my head hasn't been there. And hopefully, after today, I will be feeling a lot calmer and able to make those videos. But I also said that I wanted to start making more videos about seeing the narratives that are being promoted to us and seeing the framing that's going on in journalism. We have to understand how, again, dangerous this stuff is. So I want to start today with someone who I greatly respected, but who unfortunately has, it's really sad what's happened to him. I taught US politics for years. And one person who I literally used to tell people, if you want to see somebody who is fair and balanced, but clearly on the left, because everybody's biased. It's this nonsense of like some people aren't biased. Everybody's biased. If you want to see somebody who I think is again rational, as close as you're going to get to rational, fair, and balanced on the right, I've always told people they should go listen to Ben Shapiro. Well, a lot of people say, "Oh, Ben Shapiro." I think he is the closest you're going to get to fair, rational, and balanced, clearly on the right. And I always used to tell people, you want to listen to somebody who's fair, balanced, rational, clearly on the left, you should listen to Philip DeFranco. I started listening to Philip DeFranco many years ago when he was a pretty small YouTuber. Now, the man has close to 7 million subscribers. His videos reach well over 1 million people a day. And he has changed phenomenally. I would never tell anyone to listen to him now. He has changed so much, it's incredible. Another example of two people who, and somebody even posted a comment about this in one of my YouTube videos, Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. When I started watching them, and that wasn't even so long ago, their popularity really exploded. Um, they were very balanced, I felt. Sagar is like a moderate centrist, like sort of populist, you know, I guess Republican-ish. Crystal was more of a populist, progressive, and they were a good contrast. But and it's funny because both Philip and Crystal constantly bash the MSM. They constantly talk about how the MSM is bad. The MSM is bad. But they've literally been saying the MSM is bad and then spinning MSM talking points and saying very similar things. And it's truly bizarre. So I want to just make this video. Now I don't want my videos to be too long, so let's just look at this, okay? Because Philip DeFranco today, or yesterday rather, he just couldn't handle it anymore. So this is how far he's come from being somebody who I thought was very fair, very rational, and very balanced person. And by the way, if you want to know when his major change started, it started when he hired a newsroom. He hired an entire staff and created a newsroom for himself. And I remember when he made that intro blog video and he was introducing them, and I was like, wow, these people are all like heavily progressive left. How is this not going to influence him? And it did. Starting then, there was a marked decline in his objectivity, and it's culminated in this. So let's hear what Philip DeFranco has to say in his own words.
An election where, as I've said in the past before, and I do not care if it results in a lot of dislikes or unsubscriptions or anything, I think is Donald Trump versus democracy.
First of all, I do not care. Listen to what he says.
And defining in many of our lifetimes. An election where, as I've said in the past before, and I do not care if it results in a lot of dislikes or unsubscriptions.
Who's he talking to? His channel has been heavily left-leaning. I listen to him mainly, almost every day, by the way, and Crystal, and several other people like Jimmy Dore and others, because I like to get balanced perspectives and see where people who are thinking about all kinds of things out on the spectrum are thinking. Who's he talking to? At this point, the vast majority of his subscribers are people who deeply hate Donald Trump. There are still maybe a chunk of his subscribers. But again, all these celebrities come out and it's like, I don't care who hates me for saying this. Donald Trump is a dictator in the world. Like, nobody hates you. In fact, all you get are plaudits, stand-up ovations, and more subscriptions. Do you think he loses more or gains more? And by the way, again, this bizarre warped perspective of it's stunning and brave to do this only exists on his side of the aisle. So this is somebody, again, who I deeply respected a few years ago. See how he's changed. And again, this is somebody who you can search videos of him bashing the mainstream media, talking about how awful the mainstream media is. What is this talking point? Donald Trump versus democracy? That is such an irrational thing to say. Donald Trump is not a threat to democracy. You might not like him. You might think he's terrible. You might have valid reasons for that. I think Donald Trump is one of the most controversial figures for sure in my lifetime. There are many good arguments against Donald Trump. I don't think those arguments outweigh the positives. But I think you have to be a very cultish person to not think that there are some very legitimate and valid arguments against Donald Trump. But he is not a threat to democracy. But this is someone who traveled from, if you look at his videos from 5-6 years ago, even his videos at the beginning of Donald Trump's term, by the way, you will see a different human being. What happened to these people? So on that note, I want to show you a piece where he is basically pretending to be objective. And let's just go through it quickly, and you'll see how insane some of these things that he's saying are. Here we go. This is Donald Trump, who is trying to promote Hunter Biden's story and Facebook and Twitter's reaction to it. So let's go through this quickly.
It very much appears that a lot of this response is tied to how social media sites, especially Facebook and Twitter, fumbled when handling the 2016 Hillary Clinton email.
Okay, so he's setting up an equivalency. That Facebook and Twitter, the reason they're repressing Donald Trump from being able to spew his talking points on Twitter and Facebook is because of how they fumbled in their handling of the issues in with Hillary's emails. Right, so we're setting up this equivalency: Hillary's emails and Donald Trump, the Hunter Biden story, is basically very, very similar in the reality. Okay, so let's think about that for 1 second. Hillary Clinton, we know she did it. James Comey said so. You could go and find the interviews. I'm not going to find them now. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm too lazy. Go and Google it. James Comey said that the reason he did not prosecute Hillary Clinton was because he did not believe she had the requisite intent, which is not even part of the statute of that particular crime. Okay? Something he was ripped up and down for by many people who are just lawyers. Whether or not you agree that Hillary Clinton's email scandal should have been handled the way it was, and there were many errors there, I think everybody on all sides can agree to that. We know that Hillary Clinton actually did do something that she should not have done. There were emails, they were stored on a private server, and it should be a big deal if you're an American who cares about that sort of thing, which should be all Americans, frankly. Does that mean that Donald Trump was a great candidate and should have won? No. What does one thing have to do with the other? Is it newsworthy to promote that Hillary Clinton, who was running for president, regardless of who she's running against? So when they say that it fumbled, he's sort of implying the idea that, and therefore we let the evilest orangest man ever win. Because otherwise, what's the problem? Who cares? What did they fumble? They're platforms. You promote news and information on platforms. It was real information. No one, to my knowledge, has ever claimed that, I'm saying except for stupid people, no one who knows the situation, no one who really had an intimate detailed situation, who was on any news media, has ever frankly and expressly denied that Hillary Clinton ever stored an email on a private server. They will say that it was of little consequence. They will say that it wasn't illegal. No one has fully denied it. So again, what's the problem? Well, how did Twitter and Facebook mishandle it? Because they didn't quash certain people who were sensationalizing and using misleading headlines? Okay. So their response is to completely squash Hunter Biden's thing and make it invisible to everyone? What's the equivalency? The only equivalency is because they did this in 2016, that might have helped the evilest, orangest person win. So we have to learn from that mistake. That's the equivalency that's being set up. And I'm sorry if you don't hear it, but to me, it's really crystal clear. Again, that's my opinion. But the facts are not deniable. They did nothing wrong by allowing this information to be disseminated. And even if you'll argue that the sensationalizing they should have quashed on, that's not what they're doing here anyway.
Right, both of them likely worried about disinformation swaying the election and being complicit in the spread.
Disinformation. Again, disinformation. There was no disinformation in the center of the story. It was true what Hillary did. Let's quickly move on.
But with all of this, we saw people like President Trump saying, so terrible that Facebook and Twitter took down the story of smoking gun emails. It is to remove content from their platform should be repealed, right?
We're going to skip through a lot of this. 230 probably should be modified, but not repealed. But let's move on.
Trump and Tug also saying this was a breathtaking level of political meddling and nothing short of an attempt to rig the election. Now,
really, to some extent, that's exactly what he said, except that, again, if it's against Donald Trump, we're saying that's not a bad thing, right? They are trying to rig the election, or not as much as in their power. They are essentially saying that we think that 2016, our not squashing of a legitimate news story, again, the sensationalizing aside, our not squashing of what was at its core legitimate might have helped Trump win. So now we're going to squash it. So what is that? Of course, that's attempting to change an election. Why are you doing that? What?
With all of that said, we should also talk about the actual doubts surrounding this article. For one, so far, as of recording this video, the New York Post is the only media outlet that has obtained the data from this alleged hard drive. This because requests to access the hard drive have not been
I love how he calls it an alleged hard drive. I love that.
granted to any other outlets. And as the Washington Post notes, the New York Post published PDF printouts of several emails allegedly taken from the laptop. But the quote smoking gun email, it shows only if the date the story was posted. With this information, experts telling them there is no header information, no metadata. So that's a red flag to many, and we're in a situation where no other sources had the chance to independently verify any of this information. And on top of that, you also have people who are skeptical pointing back to the alleged email that the New York Post sent.
Okay, I want to point out something. He's talking about doubts surrounding the veracity of the emails. We have to really focus for a second on how insane the doubts that he's setting up are. Okay, he's saying that we don't have access to the laptop. We don't have access to the hard drive. He's going to bring in the fact that one of the reporters involved, refused to put his name on the article. Okay, the Steele dossier was massively disseminated. Okay, the Steele dossier was widely disseminated among the public by BuzzFeed. Every major news outlet was talking about it. The mainstream media was talking about it endlessly. There are still pundits today who talk about it. Go to Wikipedia if you've never done this, and look up the Steele dossier in Wikipedia and look at the major claims on the Steele dossier. Do you know that not one single major claim on the Steele dossier was ever corroborated? Not only in total, but not even in part. The only things in the Steele dossier that were corroborated were minor claims. Things about Michael Cohen being in a certain place at a certain time. Not one major claim of the Steele dossier was ever corroborated. And not only that, there wasn't even a scintilla, not even a smidgen of evidence for most of them. For some of them, there were like hints that could be spun into something. Okay? That was deemed newsworthy and was constantly being spread around and was widely disseminated. We're talking here about something that is extremely easy to tell if it's fake or not. You know why? Because there are people who are being named in the PDF printouts. Yes, you don't have access to the original metadata, but you know what you do have access to? Look, there's an email address right here. This is a joke. It's got an email address. There's Devin Archer, Robert Biden. These are names of real people. This is an email address. Did you ever see anything close to this level of stuff that could be corroborated in the Steele dossier? There wasn't. It didn't exist. And yet, the false equivalency is being made to his 7 million plus followers on his videos that routinely hit multiple millions of views. That they're basically, this is basically, unverifiable, and there's real serious doubts here. See, again, but it's very clever because he never clearly states it. So it's all just like sowing the seed. How is this even a big deal? This is literally what we would call news. If we could verify it, it would be criminal. News is when we're pretty sure when there's news. The Steele dossier was not news. The Steele dossier was the definition of fake news. This is real news. Real news isn't we have all the facts. I mean, okay, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but the point is made that real news is a politician went and did something and we're pretty sure there's something majorly corrupt going on, and we have very, very real legs to base this on. That's what we have here.
Was evidence of Hunter leveraging connections with his father to boost his pay. And there, they note that Hunter appears to contradict the idea that he could influence his father, saying, what he will say and do is out of our hands. In other words, it could be a really good thing, or it could end up creating chaos. Now, even with all of that, let's just pretend for a moment that Joe Biden did meet this Burisma advisor. The thing there is that the context of how they met would be critically important.
Okay, I want to point out that, again, when it comes to Biden, there's this narrative of everything that in the way it happened is super important in the way it happened, the context. Multiple people have gone on record saying that Donald Trump met Epstein once at a party, and in his habitual way was very friendly with him. Epstein was known to be a charming, probably a very deranged and damaged person, but charming in his own way, sort of like a con man. And that Trump complimented him in the way that Trump always does and says, oh, he seems like a very nice guy. There was no context to that meeting other than Donald Trump happened to meet Epstein somewhere and they took a picture together because Donald Trump is a major celebrity, and I guess Epstein was sort of a celebrity at the time also. I don't know. And Epstein was also obviously trying to legitimize himself, by the way, because if you look, whenever Epstein met anybody important, he always got pictures. It was just, so he would always be seen in the company of important people. Did anybody talk about context? Context matters. It's critical, the context. In fact, Philip Defranco in a different video spoke about Donald Trump meeting Epstein, and therefore there is some reason to suspect that there might have been more involvement. All right? What about the context? It's all such nonsense. Joe Biden said, I never met the guy. By the way, Donald Trump never said, I never met Epstein, to my knowledge. I don't think Donald Trump ever denied that he ever met Epstein. But Joe Biden did deny that he met the guy. Recall that General Flynn, okay, again, we're talking about under oath, but General Flynn, when being interviewed by the FBI, told them that the conversation that he had with the Russians was of no consequence. Turns out that the Russians asked him a question about policy, which he responded to in an offhand manner, didn't really want to get involved in. Everybody agreed once everything was out in the open that it was literally no big deal in context. And the FBI used that to arrest him and try and prosecute him. So all of a sudden, however, when it comes to the fact that Joe Biden repeatedly, over and over and over, lied about this, emphatically and vehemently, context.
And as multiple critics of the Post have noted, it is possible that Joe Biden shook hands with or briefly met that advisor while in an event. In fact, in another Smoking Gun article, it was written mostly by a staff reporter who refused to put his name on it, according to two.
I don't know why this is shocking. We already mentioned at the beginning of this video that standing right now in public, especially in the world of journalism, against the Bidens and for the Trumps is extremely controversial. This talking point that I heard all over the place, the reporter didn't want to put his name on the article. I mean, okay, I feel like maybe he's a little bit of a coward, but like, big deal. They make it such a major thing. Like, the reporter didn't want to put his name on it, and therefore we should doubt its veracity. What? I don't understand this talking.
Post employees. With that report, specifically in Baton Rouge. Notably, Morris is a deputy politics editor at the Post with this.
In case you're wondering, he's still going on about this. Let's skip ahead.
Either nobody else would take it, or if they took it, they would spend all the time they could to try to contradict it before they put it out. Which, I will say, just kind of sit on that quote for a moment to really drink it in. They want to fact-check claims?
Do you realize how insane what he just said is? Giuliani said something that's very reasonable, frankly, which is that I knew that if I went to most media outlets, they would try and debunk this report before putting it out, which is ridiculous, but that's what they would do. So he said very reasonably, therefore, I wanted to go to some place that I did not think they would try to preemptively debunk it. Like if I would go to the Washington Post, basically was what Giuliani was saying, the Washington Post would basically put out multiple articles talking about how we got a hold of some information that's definitely not real and probably shouldn't be relied on, and there's no veracity, we're only releasing it to the public and blah, blah, blah. The whole thing would be complete nonsense. So I don't, again, it's narrative, it's framing. He's framing that as Giuliani wanted to be able to say things without anybody opposing him. Like what? Like all the people who told us that Russiagate was real for years and refused to allow people, like we're talking about like people like Aaron Maté, who's on the far left, Glenn Greenwald, progressive on the far left. They wouldn't even let those people onto CNN and MSNBC to try and fact check or speak out against Russiagate. Talking about like that kind of thing. Like Rudy Giuliani didn't want that to happen with a physical laptop that he was willing to put out PDFs with people's names and email addresses on. I don't know. I'm sorry. That doesn't seem unreasonable. What's this weird framing?
Rubbish. In fact, just this morning, we even saw reports that Giuliani first approached Fox News with this story. However, according to two sources who spoke to Mediaite, Fox's news division chose not to run the story until the sourcing and authenticity of those emails could be properly vetted.
And Giuliani, whatever the reason he waited for until now, didn't want to wait anymore because it's too close to the election. I don't know why he waited. I don't know everything that's going on. But again, there's people on those email chains. And again, of those people, at least two of them admitted that the emails were real. So what is this nonsense? Who cares? It's so astonishing to see the narrative framing here and creating a storyline that it's very doubtful, and we should treat it essentially like the Steele dossier. Okay, but again, I want to quickly move on, so let's go to the end of the video because there's something astonishing here at the end, and it needs to be paid attention to.
Makes sense to do. Also, the fact that this came from him at all is a red flag, right? As has been noted, Giuliani has regularly interacted with a Ukrainian lawmaker who was recently sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department as an active Russian agent for over a decade. Notably, the Treasury...
Do you understand what narrative is being done? How there's a storyline that just got inserted into the brains of everybody watching this video who's not carefully parsing it out? What he just said. We have to also be very suspect about the fact that there are emails with people's names and email addresses that two people already verified are real. We have to be very careful about that. You know why? Because it might have come from the Russians. First of all, are you joking? Do you like how Looney Tunes is this? It sounds like the plot of a bad novel. Rudy Giuliani says, hey guys, here are some emails. They have names on them and they clearly show corruption. And your response is, oh my God, there might be some Russian mastermind somewhere going, stupid Americans, how we have them now. We give emails to Rudy Giuliani. He feed them. What? Who cares? A, who cares? B, frankly, who cares? C, we know that the emails are real because people on the email chain verified them. And D, by the way, again, I don't like this talking point, but Joe Biden and no one involved has actually denied that any of this is real. So who cares what the source was? Even if the source was Russia, which again would be the novel of a bad, would be the plot of a bad novel. Even if that was true, who cares? This is not the Steele dossier making ridiculous claims that cannot be corroborated or verified at all. These are emails with email addresses of real people. So essentially, by the way, and realize, and I'm going to end with this, realize the boogeyman that he's using is the boogeyman that he created, not him, but the media created. And now he's flipping it to discredit things. So essentially we said, oh my gosh, Trump is in bed with the Russians. Then it turned out that there wasn't really any proof that Trump was in bed with the Russians. But now we're saying, oh my gosh, don't believe anything bad about Joe Biden because the same Russian boogeyman that we've been talking about for years, maybe that same boogeyman is feeding Biden information. This is the world we live in. This is the world we live in, and it's insanity. And I plan on keep doing these videos because people need to see. Honestly, Philip Defranco is one of the people who motivated me to start talking about narrative and storyline framing. And really, Crystal Ball and Sacra and Jetty are the other ones. And I plan on doing a lot more of these videos. And if I'd been doing them for the last year, I could promise you I'd have a collection of probably 100 of these by now. Because the storylines and the narratives that are being framed around things that are really just, they're again not saying that any of it is an outright lie. It's a lie without ever lying, because he's creating this impression that these are unverifiable and not corroboratable, and it's just like Hillary Clinton's emails, which were nothing. Remember those? How those were nothing, and it swayed the election. But her emails was a meme, and it might be coming from the Russians, and therefore we shouldn't trust it. And it's all a bunch of garbage. So he never lies, but he creates a narrative. He creates a storyline. And you know what? When you do this for enough years in a row, you wind up believing that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Frankly, he's probably a Russian agent since the 1980s. Ridiculous. Anyways, remain calm. Today is the election. I will see you after. The world will still be standing. This is the Eye of the Storm. I'm Laser Weiss, and if you like this video, please share, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and I do try and respond to comments if they are respectful and reasonable. Have a wonderful day.